Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? My name is Javier. This is Facility Management Marketing Podcast. And on this next episode, what we'll be covering is why marketing should never play defense. Okay, so if you're running a proper marketing strategy, you're always on the offensive. Now, let's be honest, that's not always the case. I'm not going to say never, because there are times whenever we're ahead of things on the marketing team on our side, and there's other times where we're behind it, okay? And so here's the thing, like, let me explain kind of marketing in general. Like, the way people kind of look at marketing is they're like, hey, we have a problem. This is the problem, so we should probably do something about it. So that's a reactive approach. Now you got to start somewhere. So yes, you have to react to it. Okay. Now there's a proactive approach as well too, where the proactive approach is like, hey, this is part of our strategy. This is going to help us reach our goal of making an extra $1 million, which is a 10% growth from last year. And what we're going to do is we're going to implement these three strategies. These three strategies are going to give us this much pipeline. And from that much pipeline, we'll be able to start setting those people down into a qualified opportunity. And now those qualified opportunities, we close at 20%. You see the difference? You are basically writing your own destiny versus responding to what's going on. So I like to use this analogy a lot, but in football, almost every team, almost every offensive coordinator or head coach will script their first 15 to 20 plays. I mean, you could probably even say like 10 to 20 plays. They'll script it. They'll write out the plays ahead of time based off of what they've seen and studied on the defenses. Okay? They'll be like, oh, okay, we're playing the Seattle Seahawks. They typically play cover 2, and so they keep everything in front of them. So we're going to be running plays that are going to be based off of this. They're not going to be any kind of deep ball passes. We're going to be doing short to medium routes. We're going to be running draw plays, etc. Oh, we're going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs, so we're going to be drawing them into doing a lot of runs at the beginning, and then start throwing in the play action towards like plays 8, 9, and 10. You see what I'm saying? So that is a proactive approach. The reactive approach is like, crap, we're down by 2 touchdowns. Our strategy was to run the ball, but these guys just, got up on top of us. Now we have to find a way to come back by 2 touchdowns deficit. Now, again, I'm not saying that you never want to play defense. I'm not implying that. I'm not saying that you don't ever want to play reactive. Sometimes some of your best strategies come from a reactive approach. What I'm saying is that marketing should not always be playing defense. Marketing should not always be playing a reactive approach. You should be dictating some of the moves that your business is going to be doing. So as a facility or property management company, you need to create strategies ahead of time so that you're playing more offense and not so much defense. Okay? And so a reactive approach is great whenever you're not really sure what's going to work. You can be like, okay, we're just going to run with like 1 or 2 things, and then we're just going to see how the market responds. Example would be like, hey, we're going to implement paid search. We're going to do ads on Google and ads on Bing. Just example, okay? And we're going to be going after these specific keywords because this is where our ideal customer profile is typing for. And we're going to focus on a region because we only do like the West Coast, and that's all we focus on. That's where we have the biggest network, and that's what we're going to do. And in the West Coast, we're going to go after these types of terms, and we're going to set them to this landing page. And then we're just going to see what happens. Now, that's a proactive approach so far. And then you're not going to really know what to do after that because you're like, this is all probably new to you. You've never run ads before on Google into a specific region to 3 states and that sort of stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And then you respond and you're like, oh crap, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then you have to be reactive. You have to start pivoting, changing direction. Like, okay, maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to change this ad. But you still stay within the strategy that you're doing. Okay? A lot of times, what I see a lot of like companies, and I'm gonna say like the facilities industry is probably very guilty of this, is that we don't have enough leads. We need to we need more leads. Let's just throw some more money at this. We don't have we don't have a presence at the conference. We need to get more leads. Let's just go to a conference next month, and that's going to get us some more leads. And that's very reactive. Now, like, we're guilty of this. Like, back in July, we were struggling with lead volume at one point, to the point where we were trying to throw money at this, and it screwed everything up. So in July and August, like, we really shot ourselves on the foot because we were trying to just throw money at a problem, and that's not how it always works. And we were being very reactive. Well, eventually, once we kind of got everything fixed and settled and whatnot, we shifted gears and we become more proactive. We were planning out our next few steps. And so, the other thing too about, playing offense versus playing defense is that you get to control the narrative. And this is a very difficult thing to do. By controlling the narrative, you write your own story. And that is ultimately, that is the number one goal every facility, every property management company, every business should have, is that you should be controlling the narrative of your company, the story. You should be controlling the journey. You should be controlling the output. And let's be honest, that's not always the case. A lot of times it's just responsive, like, crap, this is what's going on. I need to do this. And I'm not saying that's bad, but when you control the narrative, you essentially are going to control the what you believe is the best way that a customer's journey is going to be, the best customer journey possible. Okay? And so, like, we do this in several different ways. And I've done this before when I was at CMI Mechanical, is that I controlled the narrative. And the way I controlled the narrative is that I essentially create a bunch of content. I did a big content marketing strategy with SEO kind of tied into it. And then I built that up, was starting to get a lot of traction, getting the right audience to find us. People were typing in certain keywords and finding us. And then from there, what happened is I started creating emails and started kind of essentially like having these people create appointments with us to learn more about commercial HVAC and how we can help them in their regions. And there was an outreach strategy. But I was controlling the narrative on this whole thing because I was being proactive on how I wanted us to be perceived. And when you control the narrative, you tell the story the way you want it to be told. And so I was able to tell the story about who we are, what we do best. And so our story was like, hey, we're really good at getting the job done in very like remote areas and using and working on very complex systems. Like, oh, you get a boiler that's 50 years old, we can totally work on that. Like, we had a customer that was JCPenney. I use that story all the time. One of the customers also we had was the post office. And you may not know this, but the post office is in every county. There's a post office in every county. Okay? There has to be. And so some of these places are very remote. And so you have to have a big network of people to reach to those post office. And so we tell that story. I was able to share those stories. I control the narrative. That was me being proactive and saying, hey guys, this is what's, this is what we're really good at. Do you have a problem like this? And then companies would find us and they're like, interesting. These guys are willing to take on the toughest jobs in the most remote places with the most complex systems. They must have their shit together. You do that, you control the narrative. You are dictating the journey. You're sharing your best side. That is scripting your plays ahead of time. Okay? And so what I want you, and I want to challenge you, is that you want to start working on playing more offense. And how do you do that? How do you play more offense versus defense? Well, first of all is this. You're going to have to play defense at the beginning, because if you don't have a marketing strategy, if you don't have a marketing leader, so like a VP of marketing or a CMO, or even a director of marketing, if you don't have those people, then it's going to be very difficult to play offense. Typically what I see is that companies that have like a marketing coordinator, not so much marketing manager, but they might not have as much leadership skills, but just it's they have a hard time leading certain elements of a marketing strategy that is aligned with sales, that's that approved with the CEO, that's like tied with revenue. Like some people have a problem with that. But you might have to start off with just playing defense and be like, listen, we're going to do like these 3 things. We have no fucking clue what's going to happen. We don't even know if we're going to get any responses out of this. We don't even know what to track. We don't have any KPIs. But what I do know, you go to one of my episodes where I talk about hypothesis, but what I do know is that other companies have done this, this, and this. So I'm going to hypothesize that this is going to at least get us some traction to where we can possibly figure out what numbers or metrics we want to run or go with. And so this is exactly what I did in Q1 of 2022 with RapMate. I essentially went in and our CEO's like, hey, listen, we aren't really tracking KPIs. And so you're going to have to determine what KPIs we need to track in order for us to be successful in marketing. I'm like, all right, that's cool. So then Q1, Q2, I kind of combined them both because I came in like in the middle of Q1. And so it didn't make sense for me to have a plan for 6 weeks and then can it and then do another plan for another 3 months. I was like, you know what? Let's just make a 4-month plan. It's going to be a Q1, Q2 strategy. We're going to kind of do a little bit of everything and we're going to start capturing data. And I hypothesized the majority of it. And the reason I hypothesized it is because all right, I've done this before. This typically works like this. This is going to work. Or these are the kind of results I'm kind of expecting. Or other companies have done this. I've seen them launch this. This is an approach that we want to kind of play with and see what happens. And then we started tracking data. And we just kind of were seeing what was happening. And oh, interesting, this is what this happened. Okay, cool. And then in Q3, we then adjusted our strategy to support some of the stuff that we learned in Q1, Q2. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking 1 to 2 quarters and just playing defense and responding. But it's within the strategy that you kind of laid out. So yes, you have an offensive approach, but it's a hypothesized approach. You're like, hey, this is what I'm assuming is going to happen. So if you've never run, ads before on Google or LinkedIn, then you're going to find 2 or 3 companies that are doing it successfully. And you're like, huh, interesting. Cool landing page. These are the words that he's going after. This is the content that they're using. Oh, cool. This is what's going on their LinkedIn profile. This is how they're running it. And then you're like, all right, I'm going to build something that makes sense for our company. And that's where you start playing a little bit of offense. And so you then start sending them to a certain landing page, or maybe you send them to a blog content that you wrote a year ago that's very rich and that is really good content and that could probably use get some more eyeballs. Maybe you send them there. Where I'm coming from is that you're kind of sharing the narrative and the story that you want, and then you start tracking the data that you need. So what I knew at the beginning when I took this role is that we needed to start tracking some specific pieces of data. One of them was ROAS, return on ad spend. And we didn't track this, before. But I couldn't track that for at least 3 to 6 months because I needed to see data coming in on a regular basis. So we were implementing HubSpot at the time, and then I didn't start tracking ROAS until June-ish. I was like, okay, let's start playing with this number now. Let's kind of get an idea. Because there was a lot of things shifting. Data was everywhere. And then we started doing the same thing with CAC, customer acquisition cost. So we started kind of putting together what CAC looks like, and CAC kept changing as far as what we would put into the customer acquisition cost. And then we finally came to a determination, Chris and I, be like, hey, listen, this is what we consider as CAC. It's going to be these 4 metrics or these 4 numbers, which gives us CAC. Now let's do this across the board, everything. And then those 2 numbers became very big numbers that we would track, ROAS and CAC, where these past 2 or 3 marketing monthly roll-ups, we are talking about them very specifically. And we can say, oh, hey, this ad did this, and this is doing this, and this is doing this, and this is great. You see what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it takes time to stop playing defense and start playing offense. But you got to start somewhere. So to a degree, you have to create a little offensive plan and just know that you're going to respond and react and play a little defense. But from there, you'll capture enough learnings and data and just start Googling stuff like, okay, how do I know what ROAS means, return on ad spend? How do I calculate CAC? Like all those things, like Google those things. And then there might be other metrics that you want to track that's important to your company. But what I can tell you right now for us, those are two big driving metrics. Other metrics that I look at is like our conversion rates. Our conversion rate from SQO to customer. Okay, why do I look at that? Because if I'm delivering a consistent SQO on a regular basis, then I'm able to, we're able to get more customers. So this is kind of what I mean. It's like we generate like X amount of MQLs, leads, okay? Marketing qualified leads. And so like last month we generated, I think 5,600. And then we convert roughly between 8 and 9% of those MQLs into SQOs, okay? So we convert marketing qualified leads into a sales qualified opportunity, meaning the sales team contacted them. They are interested. They may not be in the market at the moment, or others they are, and they convert at roughly 8 or 9%. And then from there, we convert those 8 or 9% of those people. So it makes it a smaller, pocket, and like over 25% of those people become customers. So 1 in 4. So where I'm coming from is that like those are metrics that I track that are important to us because it helps me understand like, okay, I'm bringing in the right ICP, the right ideal customer profile. And I wasn't able to do that at the beginning. I had to play defense at the beginning and just try a bunch of stuff. Okay. Another one, we tried a lot of social posting and we weren't getting a ton of traction from it. And we're like, man, what's going on? And then all of a sudden we started putting more ads out on Facebook and on Instagram. And all of a sudden, our social profile, organic wise, started having an uptick. We started getting more leads and more business organically on social media than we've ever had before in the past. And so where I'm coming from on this is that we were playing a little offense and then we were reacting. We're like, all right, let's put a pause on this and see what we can rethink this a little bit more. And then all of a sudden what we've done is now we have a game plan that's a little bit more focused. So when we go back to having a strategy for organic social, then what's going to happen there is we're going to map it out correctly. We'll be more offensive, but we're going to use paid social as a supporting piece of that pie. You see what I'm saying? And so it all builds off of each other. So that's kind of why I wanted to explain that this is why marketing should not always be playing defense. You should be playing offense, okay? You want to be proactive and you want to create your own story. You want to write your own narrative, all right? So I hope you found this very useful and informative. If you have any other questions, let me know. If there's an episode or a topic that you want me to cover, let me know. I'm happy to cover that as well too. Again, my name is Javier with Facility Management Marketing Podcast, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. For all my longtime listeners, I can't express how much I appreciate that. For all my new listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I say this all the time. Please take the time to do these 3 things. Number 1, connect with me on LinkedIn, okay? I'm on linkedin.com/Javier Lozano Jr., all one word. You could also send me a DM or do a quick search. You'll find me there. The next thing is please share this podcast with somebody. So DM to somebody or send them a text message or email someone, because that's how we're going to help grow this facility industry, okay? And then number 3, please rate our podcast on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you can do all 3 of those things, I would be very grateful. If you can just do 1 or 2 of those 3 things, I'd probably appreciate that as well too. So this podcast has been growing immensely over these past 10 months. We're on the verge of breaking 2,000 downloaded episodes, which is crazy for me. My goal was to publish 2 pieces of content every single week for 52 weeks, and we are on track, okay, which is amazing as well too. So if you guys can continue to help us grow this podcast, I'd greatly appreciate it. Other than that, have a wonderful day.